Planet of the Fakes Global News, and Pigstar HH News. Police brutality is not just a U.S. problem. Amy Hall on why the Black Lives Matter movement is once again resonating around the world. Terrence Floyd, George Floyd's brother, speaks at his brother's memorial at Chicago Avenue and East 38th Street in Minneapolis, Minnesota. A black man is killed by police as he tells them, "I can't breathe." The video of Officer Derek Chauvin kneeling on George Floyd's neck for nearly 9 minutes, as he pleaded to be released, sparked mass uprisings across the U.S. Floyd's death in Minneapolis, and the painfully slow response of the state to taking any steps towards legal action against his killers, was the final trigger. It came after the killing of Ahmaud Arbery, a black man shot while out for a run. It wasn't until a video of what happened went viral months later that anyone was charged with his murder. If they try to fight for justice, they can expect to be spied on by police. This came after emergency medical technician Breonna Taylor was shot dead by police in her own home in March. In May, a video filmed by black birdwatcher Chris Cooper also went viral. In it, a white woman calls the cops on him after he asked her to put her dog on a lead in Central Park, New York, accusing him of threatening my life. Cooper lived to tell the tale, but black people have been killed by police for less. Racialized events in the U.S., with its guns, and now its white supremacist president, have again provoked worldwide protest as people insist simply, but apparently controversially, that Black Lives Matter. For some, this is all a much-needed reminder that yes, racism does still exist in 2020. For black people it's a reminder that whether we're out jogging, birdwatching, or just at home, our existence is apparently a threat. This is something which has resonated across the world. The UK is not innocent. Discussions around what has been happening in the US has again led to black people in the UK having to explain that, yes, state racism and anti-black violence is a thing here. In fact, Britain kind of invented it. In recent weeks we've seen the deeply disturbing video of police in Manchester tasering a black man in front of his child at a petrol station. Meanwhile, the UK government sells equipment such as tear gas and crowd control ammunition to the US, which is used by military and the police. We are in the midst of a pandemic that is disproportionately taking black and brown lives in Britain, the US and elsewhere, thanks to systemic racism. Racist spit attacks against ethnic minorities have become another thing to be wary of when leaving the house. Last week, British Transport Police said no further action would be taken about one such attack on a railway ticket office worker, Belly Majinga, who died from COVID-19 after being spat at whilst working by a man who said he had the virus. They concluded the attack and her death weren't connected. It was only after activists pressured authorities that the Crown Prosecution Service agreed to review evidence in relation to her death. The use of force is more than 2 times as likely to be a factor in deaths of black and Asian people in custody. The families of those who die can expect there to be little to no legal recourse towards those responsible. They can expect their loved ones to experience posthumous trial by media, right down to photographs being cropped to try and make them look more threatening. If they try to fight for justice, they can expect to be spied on by police. The UK government sells equipment such as tear gas and crowd control ammunition to the US, which is used by the military and the police. All I could think about was Sean, because that's exactly what they did to him, said Marsha Rigg in an interview with Elle magazine after George Floyd was killed. Marsha has campaigned tirelessly for justice for her brother Sean Rigg, who died in Brixton, South London after being restrained by police officers, face down, in 2008. "I can't breathe." These were also the last words of David Dungay Jr., a Dunghutti man held down by 6 corrections officers in Australia in 2015. Prime Minister Scott Morrison has warned against importing the things that are happening overseas to Australia, in response to protests there, saying that, "We don't need to draw equivalents here." Morrison forgetting that importing white supremacist state violence is a pretty important part of Australia's relatively recent history. Try telling the family of Dungay that there is no need to draw equivalents, along with the families of the over 430 Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who have died in custody there since 1991. "I can't breathe." The same words came from Adama Traoré, a black man who died in police custody in Paris in 2016 as his sister Assa reminded reporters at a massive protest against police brutality in the French capital this week. What has been noticeable in this current outpouring of anger is the extent to which condemnation of events in the U.S. has been taken up in some of the most unlikely places. Seeing ministers of a racist UK Conservative government like Matt Hancock uttering the phrase Black Lives Matter to the press, and London's Metropolitan Police calling for justice and accountability for George Floyd on social media is peak white hand-wringing. Seeing this from institutions that have the unacknowledged blood of black and brown people on their hands is insulting. There has also been an outpouring of genuine solidarity and willingness to be part of the change, but when thinking about this, we need to remember that these issues have never gone away. As the inspirational Fannie Lou Hamer said in 1964, for 300 years, we've given them time. And I've been tired so long, now I am sick and tired of being sick and tired, and we want to change. Black people carry with them hundreds of years of being tired. I can't breathe. These were also the last words of David Dungay Jr., a Dunghutti man held down by 6 corrections officers in Australia. Prime Minister Scott Morrison has warned against importing the things that are happening overseas to Australia, in response to protests there, saying that, we don't need to draw equivalence here. So how can we move forward from here? It's for all of us to learn, organize and remember that the struggle for black liberation is far from over, whether it be across an ocean, or in our own neighborhoods. If you're not black and want to know more about being a good ally, you could start with this handy guide, and then, any popular internet search engine is your friend. As white people, it's safer to assume that your black friend or family member has experienced some kind of racism, even if you didn't see it happen. So before you embark on a conversation with them about it, remember that, and check out some of the statistics. And when the media becomes an endless stream of black death and trauma, keep all this in mind. Don't become preoccupied with guilt and apologies. Think about how you can use your white privilege, not to gain some ally gold stars for going on a protest or increasing diversity, but to actually change the balance of power. And while class privilege isn't going to stop any black person experiencing racism or racist violence, class is a major factor in how structural racism is experienced on a day-to-day basis, and those of us with good incomes or more capital must remember that. Working-class black communities all over the world face daily harassment from the police while also experiencing worse health outcomes, trauma and poor housing. The reason that any of us are able to walk through so many doors today is because of the risks taken by those who came before us. It's up to us to bring more people through. But doing so, we must resist tone policing, colorism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia and all the other things that threaten the safety of people in our communities, as well as our ability to unite and fight. That fight is not a choice for black people, but whether we have hope for what comes of it is. As James Baldwin said, first can't be a pessimist because I'm alive. We need to rest, we need to love and, when we have the energy, we need to keep up the fight. Every time we find ourselves back here I go back to a song called, At the Seams by Kimya Dawson to remind me, we'll keep planting flowers and we'll fight until the day that we don't have to pick them all to put them all on graves. If you're looking for people addressing state violence in practical ways, here's a non-exhaustive list of places you can donate to support the struggle. U.S. The Minnesota Freedom Fund, one of many regional bail funds across the U.S., paying criminal bail and immigration bond for those who can't afford it. Reclaim the Block organizes to get money moved from the Minneapolis Police Department into other areas of the city's budget that actually promote community health and safety. Campaign Zero, analysis of policing practices, research to identify ways to end police violence, technical assistance to organizers leading police accountability campaigns. Britain, United Friends and Family Campaign, UFFC, a coalition of those affected by deaths in police and psychiatric custody as well as prison campaigns, supports families and holds an annual march in London. UK BLM Fund, Black Lives Matter UK is a coalition of black activists and organizers raising money to produce educational resources, deliver training, develop strategies for the abolition of police, as well as providing emergency relief to black communities bearing the brunt of the coronavirus crisis. Australia. Free Her. In Western Australia, people who have no criminal convictions are imprisoned if they do not have the capacity to pay a fine. Single Aboriginal mothers make up the majority of those in prison for this, and this fundraiser is to help free women from prison and have warrants vacated. Full link in the description. Like, follow, share, subscribe, and comment.